reporting guideline for the state and local financial fiscal recovery funds. The guidance provides detail and clarification for each recipient, compliance reporting responsibilities under the program. So some of the background is the American Recovery Act will deliver $350 billion to state, local, and territorial and tribal governments to respond to the recent COVID-19 emergency and bring back jobs to the American economy. Funding objectives are intended to support urgent COVID-19 response efforts to continue to decrease the spread of the virus and bring the pandemic under control. One of the major goals of the Act was to replace lost public sector revenue and to strengthen support for vital public services that would help retain jobs. Another goal of the funds provided to local governments was to support immediate economic stabilization for households and small businesses. And finally, the Act was to address systematic public health and economic challenges that have contributed to the unequal impact of the pandemic throughout the economy. So the statutory eligible uses for the funds were, number one, to respond to COVID-19 public emergencies or negative economic impacts. Number two was to respond to workers performing essential work during COVID-19 public health emergency by providing premium pay to such eligible workers of the recipient, or by providing grants to eligible employers that have eligible workers who have performed essential work. Number three was for provisions of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue of such recipient due to COVID-19 public health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year of the recipient prior to the emergency. And number four is to make necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. As a recipient of the award, the city may use the funds to cover eligible costs that the organization incurred during the period that begins March 3rd, 2021 and ends on December 31st, 2024, as long as the awarded funds for the obligations incurred by December 31st, 2024 are expended by December 31st, 2026. Costs for projects incurred by the recipient state, territorial, local, or tribal government prior to March 3rd are not eligible as provided for in the Treasury's interim final rule. So at this time, the staff's going to present a large project in the wastewater plant to be funded by the ARPA funds. Other ideas will be taken into consideration at the direction of the City Commission at the hearing, after hearing additional input from residents of the City of Holly Hill. And then final plans will be developed based on the direction that we received from the City Commission tonight and be brought back to the City Commission for final approval. So I met with the staff and we went through several potential capital projects. We updated the capital improvement plan. When the complicated part of this is it's going to be treated very similar to how FEMA funds are treated for a hurricane. It's going to be highly scrutinized. There's going to be a lot of tracking, a lot of follow-up. Some cities are even hiring third-party monitors like Tetra Tech or some auditing companies that will track the money so that it's accounted for when they come in to audit all this, when the state or the federal government comes in to audit all of this. So after talking with the staff, we do have a lot of, there's always capital projects. There's a lot of capital projects. And the most important thing that came up to use the ARPA funds was to continue the expansion of the wastewater plant. And back several years ago, we did do an expansion to the plant. That was in, I think, 2009. In 2009, an expansion to the plant was done, but it wasn't completed. We didn't finish putting in the third BTU in the plant, and Antoine's going to come up and go through what that means. You know, we anticipate that the cost to do this is going to be close to the $6 million that we're going to get in ARPA funds. So what that means is that as we were planning for this improvement over the next 5 years or so, it's an unfunded project right now. We would either have to take out a loan to get that done, or go through a bond. So this is an opportunity to be able to upgrade the plant, and they'll explain why we need it to be upgraded. The other option is going through and doing a lot of other projects that are on the 5-year plan. The problem with this is that there's going to be so much tracking of how the revenues are spent that it becomes a bit of a nightmare, and you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars for a company to to track it for us. And that's things like, it could be anything from lift stations to more lining of pipes or replacement of a couple of water lines or things of that nature. So if we were going to do one project for the maximum amount of benefit to the community and utilize the maximum amount of money, we're recommending adding the BTU that was never put in when the 2009 upgrade to the plant was done. So Antoine's going to start off the conversation. David King is here with Mead Hunt, and although this is not necessarily David's area of expertise, this is usually something that Brad would handle. David has been brought up to speed on this after talking with Brad and Antoine. And of course, John Daly is here. He is our wastewater chief operator over at the plant in case you have any other questions. So I'm not sure if you want us to dive into this first, if you want to go to
Yeah, I was actually going to open it up to the public first, but you know what? Let's go ahead with staff first, and then after that, we'll allow time for the public to speak, and if anyone else shows up as well. So, Mr. Curry, the floor is yours.
Antoine Coury, part of Public Works City. The plant, the existing plant today that is fully operational has a maximum capacity of 3 million gallons per day. The 3 million gallons per day is based on the capacity of the 2 BTUs we have, or biological treatment units.
Antoine, can we first, just for their orientation, if you've got this,
Yeah.
you'll see that there's the 2 big ovals, that if you've gone out to the plant, you see the wastewater spinning around. Those are the current 2 BTUs, and off to the right, kind of in a shadow, is where the third one would be located. Now, the other clarifier that's below it, that's there.
That's the
That was put in
2009.
2009, just so that you kind of have an idea of what it is we're talking about.
Yeah. So the capacity of our plant is linked to the BTUs. BTUs are operational 365, 24 hours a day. Without them, we get out of compliance. If anything fails in the system, we are out of compliance. Based on our flow, we are about 1.8 to 1.9 annual average. That means in the summertime, our average is up. In the wintertime, it gets, or the dry season, gets a little bit lower to 1.6, 1.5 sometimes. We try to do the maintenance, regular maintenance during that downtime, but it's unpredictable. Sometimes when you have major failure at those BTUs, like we had a couple of years back when the shaft drive failed. We had to bring in a big crane, or the contractor had to bring in a big crane. We had to manufacture the drive, the bearings and everything, and that plant is old. So they don't have those parts on the shelf. So you have to manufacture it, okay? Right now, we are dealing with something in water that the lime thickener, which we mix with water before we send it to there, have been on order since August, and it will not be here until November, installed in November. So there's there's a large lead time for any units, and anything happens to these BTUs, major catastrophe, or not catastrophe, but major failure, which is one of them is the shaft.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask?
Yes.
So Antoine, basically, each BTU is 1.5 million.
Yes, sir.
And if one of them goes down and we're averaging more than 1.5 million,
Right.
what happens to do we have an overflow? Where does
We don't
the
have
excess water go?
You have to treat the water, the wastewater, to certain standards. You cannot have certain amount of pollutants in the water that you're discharging. That's what happens. You're out of compliance. That means
So we're having to discharge it before it's fully treated?
yes. Well, your levels, chemical levels
are
are a
higher.
little bit higher than, or allowed minimum levels. So when you exceed that, and actually a couple of this year we had above 6 million gallons. We have a limit, scale says 6 million. Sometimes we go over the 6 million, but sometimes we do hit the 6 million gallons during heavy rainstorms or for a few hours a day. So the third BTU, what would allows us, first of all, we can treat, even if one of them failed, we can still maintain the compliance that we are in. The penalties for FDEP, which is we are charged anytime you exceed your monthly average of levels, they have an option to fine you. But you really, because they know what was the reason, they tend sometimes not to fine us. But their last conversation we had with them, they are getting strictly more strict on the fines. They're going up double and triple on an annual basis. So luckily we haven't had, when was the last time, John? 2000, the last fine we got, 2009?
That was, for what the BP was being constructed, because we went out of compliance.
Oh, bless.
So
What year
we
was
got
that?
fined.
Bless.
What year was that?
2009, when we were building the second unit, not the first. Second, or the clarifier?
When we're doing the clarifier.
The clarifier, yes.
We're in the plan.
Yeah.
Compliance 5 months.
Right. So that's the kind of things that happen down the road. And as I mentioned to you before, in 2036, we have to be out of the river completely, which means you cannot discharge into the river. So we have to come up with a plan that you can keep treating, and you cannot be out of compliance because you're pumping it basically either to a spray field, a pond somewhere, or reclaimed water. So you have to meet certain criteria too. So it becomes harder and harder to meet it's harder to meet the new requirements from FDEP. From Public Works, from a view, we will never be able to build this without a loan or like Joe said, a loan or a bond fund. There's no way we can do it because our R&R is not big enough to complete that BTU. On the second sheet, not the plan, but shows you the average annual flows into the plant, and the yellow is the high time highlighted where we are exceeding the 3 million capacity that we have in the plant. So that means in the yellow here is where we're hitting the out of compliance. On the third sheet, and this is a little bit misleading sometimes, but on the third sheet is the pipe lining that we have done over the years, and they're color coded by year. So actually, east of the track, almost we are at 85 to 90% compliant. That means we have lined all of these pipes. On the west side, we're about 55, 60%. The problem is you cannot do one project, one street at a time. You have to do it in blocks because each one is serviced by a lift station. So you have to corner that area and start working on that location. Plus, it'll be multiple projects. So we don't think that it's feasible, and we don't have an issue. And actually, the misconception is we line pipes and our inflows increase into the plant, believe it or not. Although inflow is supposed to be intrusion from the outside. Actually, we lose some of that water into the ground. So every time we do a lining, we increase the flow into the plant. So at the number 3 is the next page is the work program for water, but I really want to go to wastewater, where we have identified the need for the third BTU in 25, 26, because we didn't know when we'll be able to fund it. So if we can move it forward, it'll be great. It's going to take time to design and bid and then build. Hopefully, we can meet we will be committed based on those dates that they are requiring us to do. We'll be encumbered by 2024 and meet the deadline of spending it by 26. So from Public Works, we can do anything, meaning we can do a number of projects. Like Joe was saying, the problem we have is then you have to track several projects. Most of our projects, by the way, I just received some information about our infrastructure. The roadway system is not in bad shape, believe it or not. Actually, we are in very good shape, meaning compared to other municipality volume-wise, we have pretty good roads, where our problem is sidewalks. So we'll address that in a different situation, but from a wastewater infrastructure, the environment of the wastewater is so corrosive. It impacts the pipes. It impacts the pumps that we have. It impacts electrical systems we have, scales. We have to treat chemicals. So it's really, that's why if you look at your water bill, you'll see wastewater or sewer is a little bit almost double as much as water, because water is just you take it out of the ground, you treat it, you add a few chemicals here and there, and then you aerate it, then it's ready to go out. Plus we have a million gallon tank. Well, we don't have that in wastewater. We cannot store waste. You can't store sewer. You have to keep pushing it through. So we can do anything, like I said. And in closing, I think it's the best use from Public Works to serve the city and the future. It's knowing that FDEP is going to be tougher on us. FDEP, we cannot dump things in the water. We can't do this. We can't do that. So it's for the future, I think, and you do it now, you spend $6 million maybe. If you do it in 25, 26, it may be $7 to $8 million.
I did speak with my counterparts in both Ormond and South Daytona to get an idea of what they were doing with their ARPA funds, as well as with Flagler Beach. I know the manager up there. And Ormond is focusing on a single project as well, although she didn't tell me exactly what it is. In South Daytona, they're actually, when the wastewater comes into the plant, it comes through the collection system and it goes from lift station to lift station, and then we have 3 or 4 main lift stations to get to the 5. So we have 5 main lift stations that if one of those lift stations goes down, it basically potentially could back up the entire system. So I met with John and Antoine and David yesterday, and we talked about it a little bit. Well, we already updated those. We upgraded those in the past, so they're good for a while. So that was one of the concerns that I had, was to make sure that our main lift stations were in good shape. The other lift stations, we're already on a program to try to replace it or upgrade 2 of those a year on a continual basis. So we've already started that process. And then, as you can see, there's a number of other projects that range anywhere from as low as $25,000 to could be as much as $500,000. But these are when you get into multiple projects and you have to track them, and you've got to use Davis-Bacon, which is a labor standard that you got to only hire certain people, and it's got to be tracked. To do multiple small projects, I think, would be problematic for this city. Focusing on one large project, I think it's doable, it's clean, it's not pretty. You know, Mark Giuliano used to say it's the bowels of the city, and nobody likes to hear about it, but it is, in fact, a large cost to the residents and the ratepayers of the water and sewer system. So that's what we've selected as our large project, and we wanted to open it up to the rest of you to see if you or the residents have something that could be taken into consideration, and see what direction we get from the commission at the end.
Great. I'll start off with some questions. So, and I know that the state legislature is coming down more on cities with water quality issues, which I think is a good thing. It'll be hard for a lot of older cities with older infrastructures like us, but I think it does need to be done because Florida relies on our clean water here, and it's going to be an issue in the future. So I'm all for coming into compliance and getting our city to where we need to be and not dumping at all anymore. So that's a good thing. My question is, though, how much are the fines? You said the last time that we were actually fined was 2009, so we're not getting fined every year, correct?
No.
Are we
because
getting warnings?
We reported to them, but since, and John can help me out, since we have a very good working relationship with them, they have not made a big deal about it because we're not exceeding the limits for the year.
Okay,
For the year.
okay.
Now, last time, when we had the sewer main break, we dumped 750,000 gallons of raw sewage into the river. Wow. And we don't know the fine, and we know it's coming. It could be as high as 30,000, 40,000. We don't know.
Yeah, and just for the record, that was a lightning strike. It was out of our
Yes,
control,
it was a
so.
lightning strike.
Yeah.
They don't, and when we met with them, John and I met with them, they said, act of God is not.
Still our
it
problem.
doesn't get-
Okay.
It doesn't get you off the fine.
Man,
Send a bill to God sometimes, yeah.
wow. There's
So,
nothing
but-
we could have
but-
done there.
But they're reasonable. I mean, they understand that we tried, and, you know, we only, in a matter of a few hours, we dumped that much. So-
Yeah. So this commission, we did a rate study several years ago on our entire water department and waste treatment. And so from that, we had 5% increases, 5% every year to fund future expenses, big expenses like these. Was this particularly in that rate study? Did we know at that time we needed to build a BTU?
Yes, we did, but it was pushed a little bit further down, and the estimates were much lower. It was $2.5 million.
Wow.
Compared to now, where we think, and actually, I asked Mead and Hunt, Brad did some investigation on the cost. We are in the ballpark. That doesn't mean we're going to hit the 6 million. It'll be maybe we have to come up with a little bit more money than the 6 million to meet it, to do these things. As you know, construction cost is going up, everything is going up, and I don't see it anytime soon slowing down, to be honest with you. Plus manufacturing and all that stuff. So everything is, if we don't do it now, in 5 years or 4 years, it'll be 7 million, 8 million, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting to find out, too, that in that rate study, we only projected it at 2.5 million, which means that by the time we get there, we may end up being short after doing such increases that we were forced to have to make. Mr. Forte, what would it look like if we were to go down another path? And I know that our staff is at capacity. So what I would look to do is hire an auditor outside to if we decided to do other projects. What would that look like? Would it be, and by the way, can this money be used to pay that auditor, or would we have to
Yeah.
come out of our general budget to do that?
The ARPA money would be used to pay an auditor to a third-party person to track the expenditures. But there's a lot of money that would be put out in design work, in bidding, so a lot of it gets spent on non-construction.
That would then be
expenses.
paid out of our general fund?
Yeah, yeah, and, you know, I had guessed that that question would come up, and we talked about it the other day. So, I mean, you can, like I said, you know, one option is you can take out a bond or a loan to try to fund this, and then use the ARPA funds to do all these other projects, or you can use the ARPA monies to do this project, and then continue on our regular repair and renewal funds to do these other projects as they're coming along, as they're spaced out in this, it's beyond a 5-year projection. It goes out to 2030, 2031.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted that base, but thank you, Mr. Curry. Are there any other questions? Yes? Mr.
Why does it take 2 years to design this thing?
First, you have to advertise it and to meet FEMA requirements. Because it's federal money, so you have to meet
Okay.
certain criteria. So you have to be advertised, then you have to, it's a long process to get a consultants on board. That's 3-4 months, okay? Then the design has to start. And usually it takes, and I asked David, something like this because you need permits too. You have to apply for permits and things. Usually it takes a year and a half. So you're looking already at year and a half from now, if we decide tomorrow to get the plans ready to bid. Then you bid it, and you have to go through a certain process too. It takes you 3, 4, 5 months to do it. So you're already by 2024. By the time you commit, you commit to the contractor to build it. And then he needs lead time to get some parts and stuff. Hopefully within 2026, he'll be done.
And it makes sense to me, if we estimated 2.5, and we're now saying it's 6, maybe, it's gonna be 10 by 2025, at least. And if we have the money to do this big project now, it makes more sense to do one big project than a bunch of little projects, because we'll have to bond this thing. It's what, a 30-year bond?
It could be whatever the bond rate is.
Is
and-
it 30-year bond? Yes.
So you do a 30-year bond at $10 million, times 1,000 customers, that's another $100 a month that someone's water bill is going to go up to pay the bond.
Yeah.
On top of the compounding of the 5% over the next 6 years. I think you got to do it now.
Said it's not a pretty project. It's not anything the public is going to see and pat you on the back and say, hey, good job. You know, it's a project that you don't see, but it's a needed project. You know, I'd like nothing more than to do something that's more visible to the public. I was pushing more toward water and sewer line replacements, but as you can see, as far as the sewer is concerned, we're pretty far ahead on that one. And the water lines, you know, as they damage and break, we replace them as we go.
And water is not corrosive, you know. Water, usually we have some clay pipes, we have some ductile iron pipes, believe it or not, for water, but they last a long time compared to wastewater. Wastewater is very corrosive. If you have a ductile iron, like we have, the one we got struck by lightning, it struck under the canal. It's buried, it's not buried, but it's right sitting on top of the canal. So it went through the water to the pipe. So we had about 3-inch hole on both sides of the pipe. So it's,
Commissioner Daniel?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. So it sounds to me like it's like salt, like being on the beach side. Salt eats through all this stuff.
a whole lot
It's
worse
worse
than
than
Yeah.
salt.
Two questions. One is, how come we had a couple, and then a couple, and then a bunch on the other sides with this annual flow yellow charts? Was there a reason that we only had a couple?
No, this is
Just
depending
random?
on the rainy season, Commissioner, to be honest with you, really, that's where, depending on if you had a very strong rainy season or not, that's about it. This year.
This is random?
Yeah, that's
There's
just.
no rhyme or reason?
Nope. And this year, I mean, we only had, like, in August, we had the 4.8 MGD.
Right.
But this year, we didn't get that much rain, but we got some intense rains, but never a lot of rain, so.
Okay, I don't want to be a cheerleader for Daytona, but years ago, a friend of mine was bottling the Daytona water, and it was supposed to be like one of the best in the country. What did they do that we don't do in our water
They
that makes
called it
it
the
so
best.
good?
They just called it the best.
They mark.
No, it was supposed to be, I mean, you could drink it right out of they put
Oh,
the,
you mean wastewater?
no, drinking water.
Drinking
The
water?
drinking
okay.
water was supposed to,
We get it from the same place they get it, okay?
they
You
don't
get
have any kind of a purification system
You
different?
can ozonate it, I mean, there's advanced, our system is still relies on lime treatment and stuff like that. New plants have different ways, but they're running into problems also. The ozonation, which they were complaining, now there's a shortage of oxygen. Now we have shortage of chlorine. Now we have shortage of SO2 for all kinds of treatments. So it's Daytona and us, we get the same water from the, we aerate it like everybody else.
Out on LP,
The same.
our well fields are out on LPGA, and they're right next to.
Well, you know, they put it in a bottle and then they sell it for $1. What makes that any different than the water coming out
Well,
of the tap? They gotta do something to it.
They have the ability to bottle their water. We don't
They
have
call it-
bottling.
The world famous
Yeah.
beach, too.
We
Yeah.
have,
It was, at one point.
Yeah.
John, we have the same requirements as Daytona as everybody else in the quantity or quality of water, and we have met it. We have abandoned, actually, well, not abandoned, but we only turn on the local wells that we have inside the city. We get 98% of our water off west of I-4, I-95.
95.
sorry, I-95. That's where our plant, our big wells are.
They have well fields on Robert Ridge, you get them from.
It's right by,
Norman gets all theirs on Robert Ridge.
no, we get ours
Out by
over
where
by
Publix is.
Margaritaville.
Right by
Yeah,
Margaritaville.
by Margaritaville. That's where we have about 6 wells out there, so.
A lot of it depends on the water table
Yeah,
underground.
there's a lot of things that affect it, but you treat it the same way, so. And the issue is, we are close to the water, so we have some salt intrusion to these wells, so.
Okay. Are there any other further questions for Antoine? Thank you, Antoine. Just one further question, because I meant to ask this when I was talking about the rate increase. So if we do this project and we pay for that, we're expecting it to be about 2.5 million. Do you think that our rate payers could see a decrease?
No, because a lot of that rate is also based on the other capital improvements that are scheduled on here.
That are probably going up as
Yeah,
well?
what you're really doing is you're fronting this project earlier than what we expected to do it. But
Okay,
you still have all these hundreds of thousands of renewal and replacement items that still have to take place in the plant.
okay. Thank you very much. All right, at this
What-
time,
What it did do, Mayor, is it avoided us from having to get a bond or a loan to do this project.
right,
And that's where you might see the savings.
okay. At this time, Val, could you pull up the public participation, the clock? Is that hard to do? Okay, you just keep, oh, okay, you can just keep watching. So we'll allow 5 minutes as normal as, for public comment. We normally don't do that for workshops, but obviously we want to hear if you have any suggestions or ideas. So now would be the time to do it if anyone wants to come up. Yes, Mr. Legary.
Can't count, so this isn't, I don't have one of these for everybody, but. It's there, right?
I can share with Roy if you want.
Good.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Jim.
Very good.
All right.
So,
And then just state your name for the record.
Jim Legary, 342 Burley. So this sounds like we've already spent the money, but if you look here, I have underlined a number of things from the president's. And what he's talking about here is, in a number of spots, a concern for underserved areas and poverty areas. And we all know what the population of Holly Hill is like. And I'm suggesting that there might be something we could do here. I'm suggesting that after listening to you, the money is already spent. It's kind of,
No, that's why we're having this workshop.
I understand, but I've also been listening to, what. There is also in the multi-page recovery situation, there's multiple mentions of broadband. Now, I don't know, I've thought that perhaps we could put some computers someplace that people could use. Perhaps we could do something, because as we've discussed, this is not visible to the citizens, and it might be visible at some point as we increase the taxes if we have to bond this or whatever, but something that the citizens could see that might create a little bit more, pride, I guess is the word I'm looking for here. I would really like to see something. Like I said, I know, as far as the broadband discussion is concerned, the line that AT&T has to my house was installed in 1942. It's a copper line. It doesn't allow for much speed. I don't know, and I'm sure that would be a fortune to have them run some kind of cable down my block. But I know that there are other things that are little stations, perhaps, something. But I would really like to see this windfall in some way benefit the general population other than to take away the sewage.
Before you go, Mr. Legary, so you would say broadband is one of your ideas, possibly putting in
It's like I
fiber?
say, if you read the Recovery Act, it's mentioned in the Recovery Act, what, 20 times, Joe, probably?
Broadband infrastructure.
Infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah, it's there, and as we can see, if you looked at the underlying situations here, there's 5 or 6 mentions of underserved citizenry. And I think we have a significant number of those.
Is that the executive order on advancing
Yeah.
racial equity? And
No, that's
support?
not that. There's like 3, I believe there's 3 notations for, from the Treasury Department on what to do with the money, how to do it. And broadband is mentioned.
Yeah, there's 4
repeatedly.
categories for the ARPA funds, and broadband infrastructure is one of them.
Right.
Oh, okay, in the packet?
Yeah.
Okay. As well, Mr. Legary, so we're just trying to figure out too, and this money has not been spent. This is actually the first time I have heard of this plan from the city manager. We've asked him to go through with staff to figure out where some things could be spent on. So this is the first time I'm hearing of it. But also too, I was looking forward to any ideas as well, because it's easy to say, well, just use it to benefit the community. And, what is your vision of that? What is our vision, my vision? It could be different.
Right.
And so specific ideas, like broadband is a good idea. If we look into that, if we don't have broadband across the city already.
Specifically, I have suggested that on several occasions that it would be really, really a good thing if we could have somebody that could go to the neighborhoods and find the grandma that's looking after kids, or find some way to improve, maybe acquaint those people with services that might be available from the federal government, maybe to acquaint them with services that we have communally, to help organize things that would be of general use to the general population. That would require a salary, and that would require something that we have up to now been adverse to. But like I say, I think the majority of citizens, when they encounter anybody from the city, it's either the code board or the police department. And it would be nice to have them acquainted with something that actually is working for them in a different way. Is that specific enough?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for ideas that we could use the funds on. Some of those we can't. We do have now.
In this presidential declaration here, it says something to that effect. I think that would be back 3 or 4 pages, but I underlined it.
I'll look into that. We do have a victims advocate now working for the police department that, actually, I just saw the report today of how many victims they're helping and helping them get services and things like that, which is a great thing for the community. And that's funded through a grant. But, so I'll put down services and broadband to look into.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Legary. Yes, ma'am. And by the way, if the commission has a question too, it's a workshop, so it's informal. You can certainly ask them. Hi, Ms. Heidi.
Hi there. I am Heidi Heller of 460 Ridgewood Avenue in Holly Hill. I would like to thank the Commission for having this important meeting regarding the privilege of the city and its citizens and businesses to be eligible for the public monies given to us in the American Rescue Plan Act. I am thanking you in advance, the Commission and staff, for considering all options that you can. We, the City of the Holly Hill, were awarded over $6 million. Let us consider utilizing these monies for the betterment of everyone in a multitude of venues. The compliance and reporting guidance in today's agenda packet is replete with details for eligibility. As our city manager, Joe Forte, says, the devil is in the details. Lucky us. I'd like to say I do appreciate the importance of the wastewater. Who doesn't? I'm surprised that it seems like we're at the level where a straw will break the camel's back. Something's going on. Hopefully, we can really address more aggressively in detail issues at not just the wastewater, but other divisions, a little bit more on a timely basis, just like you have a tire with low pressure. As far as the 10 to 20,000 or the auditing amount, that's not much. You're talking about $6 million. You're not talking about much. Let's do a couple projects that may not, might give a pat on the back, as was mentioned. Some of my thoughts just might be absurd, but let's just do the unexpected. It is an absurd thought, I think. How about a free sales tax day? How to get revenue to our businesses, and we're increasing our business revenue. If you do business in Holly Hill, the city's ARPA fund would pay the taxes. Just like the state has a school sales tax exemption during a certain time frame, can't we, for a day, pay the taxes for what's bought in our city to support the businesses? Buy a rug, a car, trailer, a boat. Businesses can opt in or opt out. How about the city, through the ARPA, offer free bus passes for our residents of Holly Hill? At a minimum, more people may be able to apply for a job, work locally. They would have more access to our local businesses for shopping, maybe even a restaurant meal. And as we're talking about buses, how about creating more bus shelters so people can go out and participate in all that the city has to offer? Bus stops with shelters, benches, and ramps for our veterans in wheelchairs and everybody else, so they can shop locally. Even though a planned refurbishment of the city public toilets is on the calendar, let's hire out some professional cleaners who utilize soap, water, and a scrubber for our public toilets at our public parks. And this will help prevent other diseases. A weekly scrub, a real scrub, let's deter another health issue. and create pride in the city and impress our visitors who we want to return to visit and maybe buy property. Volusia County and our city need to be responsible for what they are supposed to maintain. Let's prompt Volusia County to be accountable for their obligations. Some of the canals for the stormwater are majorly overgrown. Doesn't that lead to water backup, flooding, and diseased muck? The Code Compliance Department would have given a homeowner violation notices. Let's give the county a violation notice, or just let's hire local landscapers and get it done, then bill the county. Stormwater again, can't we find a better way than to dump the stormwater in the canals than dump into the river? How about some recycling? Maybe that is just one component of your current wastewater project, which would be excellent. And lastly, for today, there are expensive bronze signs within the city stating funding by ECHO or flood in the navigation of Volusia County. Let's use the small portable thin metal signs, usually pasted on easements or for yard sales, that say City of Holly Hill, ARPA, funded project, no sales tax day, or ride a bus for a month. The signs just might be all over the city for all residents, business, and visitors to see that Holly Hill is getting it done for everyone. Hopefully, the $6 million plus is taken to full advantage. I know we can do it, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Heidi. That was a extensive list. I actually really appreciate that.
Mayor-
Wait, yep, would you like to say something?
When you're
Big
done, I
question.
just want to throw in a piece of information
Okay, go ahead and do that now. Is it to her or?
in general.
Okay, thank you, Heidi.
I want to remind you and everyone that places like the county and Daytona Beach were able to account for lost revenue. And the monies that they were able to account for lost revenue, they're getting their ARPA money does not have to be
Reported.
accounted for the same way. So that's really unrestricted funds. And I actually learned today that Volusia County, the amount that they thought they had as unrestricted is probably going to be closer to half that. So they don't have as much lost revenue as they originally thought. So we don't have a lost revenue dollar amount that we can take those ARPA monies and say, all right, let's use this for what we want, which we could do some of those ideas, but I don't have the flexibility. I have to stay within the four corners of these four items. And unfortunately, some of the items that came up just don't fit into that.
What about the tax holiday? Did that fit in one of the four?
I don't see where it would fit into
Yeah, I don't
any of
think
these
it fits.
It says definitely no.
It says definitely no.
No.
Okay.
You know, even the broadband.
Yeah, it's pretty
infrastructure.
strict about what we can use the money for, those four categories.
The broadband infrastructure is a great idea. When I was in Seminole County, we extended, I didn't say.
Fiber.
They extended fiber to the west, where's Oviedo? East, into the unincorporated area where there was schools and developments that had no broadband. So the project was done to bring broadband into the community, but it didn't make connections to the homes, or it didn't make computers available. It just made broadband available. So we do have broadband available in the city, either through Spectrum or AT&T. Either one of them are a good choice. And Jim, although your copper line is in 1942, they just installed a brand-new copper line down my street. Why it wasn't fiber optic, I don't know, but it's still copper.
It's cheap.
So,
Yeah.
and it still runs just as bad as
A lot cheaper,
1942
yeah.
copper.
Yeah.
So we're restricted to these uses. I just want to make sure I stated that on the record.
Did you say, though, that fiber would not be supported in one of the four categories unless it was unrestricted? Fiber infrastructure, broadband?
Well, you'd have to get you'd have to get AT&T or Spectrum or some broadband provider that
To do
wants
it.
to do the project here.
Right.
So and that's probably a more technical question that I'd have to ask, because we already have broadband.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is possibly
Fiber.
improving it from
Right.
copper to fiber.
Right.
And I don't know if that is a qualifier, or if it's got to be bringing broadband into an underserved area.
Okay. Did you have some? Oh. Yeah, you can.
There is a program called called Lifeline, which will contribute some $50 to $75 to a home.
I think I researched that.
And that's one of the things I'm saying about my municipal person could go out and acquaint people with that program. So that where broadband is available, this Lifeline thing will contribute
pay for
$50
it.
to $75 a month to pay for it.
For an elderly person or just anyone underprivileged? Okay.
Anybody that, I guess there's probably
Some standard, yeah.
some economic standard. But
Okay, thank you, Mr. Legary. Well, and I really see this workshop as throwing out ideas. I don't think you're going to walk away here tonight and direct him tomorrow to start on the $6 million project. This is, in my vision, the start of the conversation. Now, do we want this to go on 2 years? No, of course not. But for me, in my vision, this is the start of the conversation. And I knew that the city, as a commission, we needed to talk about it now that our staff has had time to dig into it. And now would be the time, too, if anyone else has any ideas or anything we would like staff to look into, to go ahead and do that. Ms. Curry?
And Mayor, I feel the same way. I'm not prepared to go away before we go away to make a decision. I need to digest material that I just received.
This is not the last conversation, this is
No.
the first one.
Yeah.
But like you said, we have a time frame to do this, and we want to make sure that we're able to get it done. It's got to be committed by 2024 and completed by 2026. So it sounds like it's a long time.
But it's really not.
Sounds like it's not based on Antoine's comments.
And what I've been presented, without even looking into it yet or researching, doing any of the work I would normally do, I would say, knowing those 4 categories, and I went to a course at the conference on it to learn about it, and then I've read those categories and read them because they're very restricted. I feel as though having a BTU done would benefit the entire city, whether you're a resident or a business. I mean, point blank, that's going to benefit the entire city. And for us to not have to dump into the Halifax any longer, not only is it going to be a requirement, but I heard Ms. Heller mention something about not dumping into the Halifax anymore. Well, how are we going to accomplish that? By these funds, apparently. And this does look like a good project to me. I just want to let you know. I go away with positive thoughts about this project. But secondly, I want us to think about one other thing, that while I was reading through those categories, I thought to myself, you know, a lot of other government entities have done the very thing, and what better way for us to show true appreciation to our employees for sticking it out through this whole pandemic, because they could have been like other employers have and just up and quit and collected a check from the government. That could have easily been done, and I think people did it because they got extra money. Our employees didn't do that. They stuck by us. They stayed here, they took care of our city, and it didn't matter about a pandemic. We had outbreaks in the PD that severely crippled them. We had outbreaks sometimes here in City Hall, but our employees still chugged it to work. And underneath those categories is a category for us to be able to recognize our employees with a small bonus. I mean, what better way to show thank you for your dedication? And then at the same time, let's say, I'm just going to say hypothetically, we choose this project. We're benefiting every citizen and every business owner. So it's a win-win. Not only are you showing appreciation to your employees who stuck it out for all these citizens and business owners, but you're still helping your community. So I just think, right now, I have positive thoughts for this unless, you know, I hear other stuff or if I look into it and I don't like it anymore. But
All right, and we have 1 minute. We can go a little bit over, but let's try to wrap it up here. If anyone has any ideas or any takeaways.
Antoine, you mentioned sidewalks dire need for sidewalks?
On this plan.
I know, it's not in this plan, but how much money you need to fix the sidewalks?
Well, we have a plan. It's part of the infrastructure that we're doing. I have not talked to Joe about it, but I'm thinking maybe 1 year we'll do some paving and 1 year we'll do some sidewalks. So we will be alternating. We have identified a couple of corridors that it really need. Walker Street is one of them. The problem is you cannot just do the sidewalk. You have to redo the aprons because that's where they have to meet, and they have to meet the new criteria. If you remember, if you're driving LPGA, when the county did the sidewalks on LPGA, they did the driveways too.
Right.
Because that's, one, it protects your sidewalk, that you don't have to come back and fix it. And then two, it keeps from trying to keep the water from the road off of the sidewalks and into the yards.
And I know this is going to go into next year's budget talks,
Yeah.
but my thought process is trying to look forward. If we do take this big project on and we don't need to bond $6 million,
Yeah.
why don't we do something like, maybe you borrow $2 million to accelerate the sidewalks, get it up to standards, because what's happened in this city up until recent times is that we build it and we forget it until it breaks. And thankfully, Mr. Forte and Public Works, we're putting in renewal and replacement plans with our fleets and with our lift stations. But if we got to fix the sidewalks, I'd rather get it all like we did with the paving last year. Let's do a big jump start and then pay it back a little bit at a time. And we can have a fresh beginning. Because we're not going to have to, there's no way we know that in the next 5 years, we would have had to borrow probably $10 million to do what we're talking about doing.
At the staff level, we've talked about other capital needs that we have, and I plan to do another work session with the commission to talk about things like advancing sidewalks, building a fire station. There's a lot of other capital things that we need to consider, and there's some funds available to it. So that's going to be another work
Okay.
session. But Mayor, the direction that I'm seeking from you tonight is not committal, it's direction. And that direction may be that the five of you take this information and that list of capital projects and you go back and you look at it, and we set up another work session, we talk about it again, and see if you come back with anything different.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Mayor, that's what I'd prefer.
Is there any objection to that?
Just for timing purposes, just to make you aware, you're probably pushing that work session off either to the first meeting in December or not until January.
Okay.
That's because Commissioner Curry's not going to be here in November.
I won't be here
okay.
November 9th.
I'm good with December.
Even the
That's
8th.
December 14th,
Be good.
right? And I think we all need to come to the table and look for direction on where we're going to head, so.
I'd like to make that a work session both at 5 o'clock and then to continue it after the meeting,
Afterwards.
to try to reach some conclusions.
If needed, yeah. Let's go
Yeah,
ahead and
that'd be
do
good.
that. If there's no objection to that, we'll get that on the books. And is there any other further comment from my commissioners to my left? No?
We're good.
Any further comment, Mr. Forte?
That's all.
All right, I just want to thank the citizens. Thank you for coming up with those ideas. Now, it
Absolutely.
is 6:03. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we will start our city commission meeting. We are adjourned.
That's one. These are the.
I know, always, always.